let me go to live stream. Let me make sure we're live streaming, and then we can let some people in.
I got some things saying that we were going to or are being live streaming.
Are we live streaming? Let me see. Let me just make sure.
Saying that we.
There we go. There we go. There we go. Okay. Shall we let people in?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. Everybody's welcome to this meditation.
Woohoo!
Hello, hello, and welcome. Welcome all.
Welcome. Good evening if you're in Europe, European time zones. I see some names that suggest a lot of you are. It's always nice to see where you are in the world if you're willing to pop it in the chat or rename yourself the same way that Virginia's done. I'll just do that as well. I'm in the UK with a Dutch name in the UK. Great. So we've got more UK. Ooh, Sydney. Is it like really early morning now? Yeah. It looks like dawn is breaking in Sydney, Canada. It'll be more of a good afternoon or morning in Canada, depending which side of Canada. Thank you for joining Virginia and I for another embodied meditation session. Hello, Lisbeth in Hoegaarden. I like Hoegaarden beer. You probably hear that all the time. Virginia just started sharing some links. Everyone's probably seen the links by now. Embodied meditation, the embodied meditation book, the embodied meditation course, the embodied meditation weekly sessions. More Belgians in the house. I grew up in Zeeuws-Vlaanderen, very near the Belgian border in Terneuzen. Some Dutch people and Belgian people might know that. Antwerp was a popular day trip for my family. Antwerp and Ghent. So, and now slightly stuck in the UK again for a while. Well, I can go back, but it's getting a bit awkward again with all the COVID precautions and restrictions. Good morning, 6 a.m. in Australia. That is a commitment. San Francisco, good morning. It'll be early there as well, won't it? Early morning. So hopefully I can keep you awake and occupied, interested enough to keep you awake. Good evening from Kent in England. Yeah, that's where I am. I'm in Canterbury. I'm moving house next week. So I've just made some nice looking arrangement behind me with cushions and blankets, because basically I'm surrounded by boxes. But in this little square, all is neat. And I am moving to Lincolnshire in England. So if anyone's in Lincolnshire, give me a shout, because I'll be looking for new embodiment friends to meet up with and dance with and meditate with in that area. I don't know anybody there yet. So a bit of an adventure. Great, so 1 minute to go. So we'll be doing a bit of practice if you want to join. So do make yourself a nice place to sit, lie down, do some stretching if that's what you might need. Mainly going to be guiding a sitting still practice, but I'm going to be emphasizing that if you want to move, if you need to move, then you should, but you can. So do you have the usual intros, Virginia, to say? And I'll shut up for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll shut up for a moment.
So welcome everybody. We're on the top of the hour. We're officially starting, and Karin will be leading us in a session today on how to make your meditation more trauma sensitive, which is very interesting stuff, either for yourself or if you're a teacher or trainer, for the people you guide. So Karin is quite experienced in meditation, and I am trying to find that little paragraph. There we go. So she is a yoga and meditation teacher, and she does have an MSc in mindfulness studies, and she's been teaching compassion-based mindfulness full-time since 2008. She delivers yoga teacher trainings and is a certified embodied yoga principles teacher trainer, and is a trainer on the embodied facilitator course and the meditation course we've got coming up. She also has a background in community arts and works as a storyteller, and she combines a range of embodied and creative approaches to support the personal and professional development of the people she works with. And just a reminder before we start that we do have a course coming up. The links are there in the chat. I'll paste them again. And if you want to join this course, there's two components to it. So one is for your personal practice, going deeper, and the other one is if you want to be trained to teach embodied meditation. So you have those two options. There is the embodied meditation book with just out recently, which you can grab hold of. And all the links are there for you in the chat. So I'm looking forward to this session today. Karin, what do you have to share with us? I know it will be very, very enlightening. Just unmute, Karin. No, yeah, of course you can't unmute because I'm sorry, I apologize. Why don't you just transmute the info? There you go. Now you can unmute.
Yay. Thank you. Yeah, what do I have to say? Well, I listened to Mark's talk this morning, and he said a lot of the things I wanted to say as well. So it would be quite good to know who attended Mark's talk yesterday morning. If you give me a wave, and I'll get an idea. A couple of hands going up, not too many. Okay, a few. So I'll try and say a few other things. But basically, yeah, the session is about trauma sensitive mindfulness, and there are some basic principles that are also in our book that might help you to work generally, really, not just with trauma, but generally if life's a bit tough or you're going through a big transition, there might be a lot of emotion present in your body, fight flight response present in your body, or numbing, all of these things that we tend to do in the face of danger or perceived danger. So thank you, Virginia. I always forget the recording thing. So yeah, this session is about that. And Mark did cover some really good stuff in yesterday's session. And one of the main things that I want to start with too is to emphasize the main principle of trauma sensitive embodiment, trauma sensitive mindfulness, trauma sensitive therapy, trauma sensitive anything is choice. You know, so often when we struggle with difficulties in our life, whatever it is, especially trauma, is that we feel powerless. And maybe we were in a situation where we were powerless, where we were a victim of something that happened to us, that was done to us. And as Gabor Mate so beautifully says, you know, it's not your fault. What happened back then is not your fault. And what you do in the future is your choice, your responsibility even. And that's at the core of how both Mark and I teach about trauma awareness, and how all our trainers in Embodiment Unlimited are trained, and how we view it is that, you know, we had this shit hand that was dealt to us in some way, whatever it was. Someone died, you were ill, you had an accident, you were abused, not your fault. And how you go forward, there's some choices you can make. And if you have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, that's going to be probably a lot more difficult than, you know, if you have a few small t traumas, which we probably all have, especially once you get to my age, 50, you've probably been through some difficult things. So, you know, there's obviously a range there as to how challenging it might be and what you might need on your journey to recovery. We know that mindfulness is about being in the present moment, which could be hugely helpful for anyone with a difficult past, to not dwell on it more than we need to. We also know that mindful awareness can help us to touch joy in the present moment, to realize actually this moment is okay, or one aspect of this moment is okay. Now, I might be in a lot of pain in my right leg, but my left hand feels okay. There can be solace in the present moment in that way. I also know, and you might know from my own experience with trauma therapy, that a certain level of embodied awareness is hugely helpful in trauma therapies and any embodiment you might be into to help you through difficult times, because we can learn a lot more about the things that activate us, that trigger us, that activate certain habitual responses. And we can also learn how to regulate ourselves a little bit more, how to stabilize ourselves a little bit more. And we can learn what works in that sense. What are the types of practices that help you or that help me? It's going to vary, you know, it's going to be different for Virginia than it is for me, than it is for Mark. And it's going to be difficult for, not difficult, different for you. So choice as to what might work, what doesn't work, can help you with any of those types of difficulties. It's quite empowering because, you know, you can become kind of your own embodiment teacher. You know, okay, sitting still for a whole hour, observing my breath is not good for me. I just start to feel more and more anxious. Someone else might love it. Working with the breath might be really calming for them. And if you go on a retreat where you're being told you've got to do this because this is going to help you, this is going to be the cure to all your problems, then you might feel like a failure if it doesn't work for you. So I want you to know that not everything works for everybody. You're always in choice when you're at our sessions and trainings. And this is like the big thing to bear in mind. So that's really the overarching principle, is choice. So I'd like to do a little bit of a practice with you, guide a little practice for you. So the first thing you might like to do is, as I said, do a bit of movement. Because I'm moving house and it's chaos around me, I'm not going to stand up. You might like to stand up and have a little stretch. I'm going to have a little stretch just where I'm sitting, taking up a bit more space. And often if we're looking for a posture that's a bit more empowering, that kind of helps us to maybe feel strong and powerful, standing meditation can be really good. Particularly if your trauma pattern is, or your response to difficulties might be to freeze or to fold, one of the 4 F's in trauma response: fight, flight, freeze, or fold. It might be really good to stand. If it's hard work to stand for long periods, just practice briefly or alternate. If you get activated in a sort of fighty way, it might be really nice to sit or even to lie down to relax. Fold is a bit like fawn. It can be. There's more to fawn. Sometimes fawn is also called tend and befriend, when you're kind of extra nice. Erica Chalkley, one of our trainers, is a bit of an expert in being too nice as a potential response to being in the world and trauma. So fold is, kind of like giving up, or in the animal kingdom, it would be playing dead, pretending, you're no longer a useful prey. Ventral, vagal. So, see what posture might be nice for you after a bit of stretch, and notice you know that you can move anytime. So if you want to change position, move, let off a bit of steam by shaking out, that's all totally fine. And then we can use some soothing touch. I'm just checking where my mic is. So I often use this movement of moving my hand across my chest from side to side, and moving my hand at the same time across my belly in the opposite direction. And sometimes just resting the hands at the center of the body there. It's very soothing. Again, it's soothing for other people as well. It's part of some polyvagal exercises, another way of treating and working with trauma. So some soothing touch can be really helpful as a way of connecting to ourselves that doesn't immediately go into, right, sit still, don't move, which can feel quite difficult. And maybe a few deeper breaths. And as you breathe out, sensing the physical relaxation in the body that comes with breathing out. And again, sometimes a yawn comes, that relaxation that we might experience during meditation might, not necessarily, it's not always relaxing, can lead to yawning. So allowing those to happen, yawning is great for releasing tension. And then if you like, you can keep your hands in touch with the center of your chest and your belly, or you can let your arms rest down by your side on your lap. And if you feel a little bit kind of activated, restless, it might help to lean back a little bit in your seat. You feel a bit too sleepy, collapsy, it might help to sit up a bit more. So often it's about kind of responding to being a bit overactive, hypervigilant, or a bit collapsy, sleepy, numb. and either waking ourselves up a bit, calming ourselves down a bit. And the posture can be a part of that. The next choice would be to open your eyes or close them. And again, you don't have to stick with whatever you choose for the whole practice, which will only be a few minutes. You might notice, oh, I like closing my eyes. It's less stimulating, especially sitting in front of a screen. And others might feel like, oh, it's going a bit too much to feeling disassociated. I need to remind myself where I am. Or if you're ever practicing in a group, we are practicing in a group, but mostly, in our own spaces. If you're ever somewhere where you want to meditate, where you don't feel very safe with your eyes closed, it's really great to learn how to be aware of yourself and your body with your eyes open. So see what feels helpful right now. Maybe it's really nice to see the faces on the screen. I see some people I know. There's again no hard or fast rules, and anyone that tells you one way of meditating is the best, be careful, be a little extra cautious. Because really, in my experience and all the teachers I've had, there is many, many ways. And noticing how you are in this moment. You might notice some bodily sensations. Maybe the heartbeat, breath, temperature on your skin. And if any of the bodily sensations are difficult to be with, feel free to take your attention instead to your environment. So this is when you might open your eyes and look around for a moment and notice the sounds around you. And then you can come back to the body. And perhaps you're noticing some thoughts. General mood or emotions. And see if you can receive them with some level of kindness, friendliness. Noticing and letting go of any ideas that things should be different. To help you perhaps stabilize, calm yourself. You can be aware of the ground underneath you, or the support from furniture like the chair or the wall against your back. Relax your belly. And again, if that for some reason doesn't make you feel calmer, that's okay. No, you can stop. You've already meditated for a few minutes, and that might be enough. Feel free to stretch, daydream, move, basically have a break from the meditation anytime. Good. And then having just done this brief practice, if your eyes are still closed, softly open them, look around a little bit before going back to the screen, maybe having another stretch. So that was just a few minutes, mini kind of pit stop or checking in with ourselves with a little bit of kindness. Oh, I'm feeling this way today. That's okay. Noticing how you are and how you feel with some kindness, and then knowing, oh, I'm having a hard day, or there's some hyper arousal going on, or some dissociation. Maybe today's practice would be to go out for a walk, to breathe in some fresh air, to look at the sky, to hug a tree. You know, maybe that's your mindfulness practice on any difficult day, or maybe that's a better mindfulness practice if you are through a massive life change or a lot of difficulty. Mindfulness is being in the present moment with our senses, with our body, and that can also be activities like gardening, like doing art, anything where we're really present with what we're doing. And if we can, especially when we're trying to heal from a really difficult thing, or we're grieving, or we've got a lot of pain of whatever kind, then maybe the best mindfulness practice is to do something that's enjoyable and calming. It doesn't have to be sitting still. And so very useful to kind of notice how we are with different things and different practices. And as David to 11 says, I'll just put his name in the chat in case you haven't heard of him. It's really useful to notice and kind of give some kind of measurement to the things that work for you. So keeping a practice journal and kind of making a note, oh, this seems to calm me down, or this seems to help me on a really stressful day. So you start to keep track of different practices and how they might help you to stabilize yourself, how they might help you to sort of increase your window of tolerance if you do feel your trauma is activated. Or, you know, some days you might think, oh, I can be with some difficult emotions, and other days I can't. Is that because you're doing a different practice, or is that because you're doing it in a different place or a different posture? So really, he really encourages us to kind of become our own researcher, you know, and keep some kind of measurement scale of, oh, this was on a scale of 0 to 10, this was very calming. Give myself a 5 or a 7 today, or if it was really triggering this type of practice, like a body scan can sometimes be quite triggering. If there's a lot of trauma in the body, maybe that's, you know, not so good. But often we don't know, especially if we're sort of finding a practice quite difficult. We're not necessarily quite sure what aspect of it was, or what was exactly the difficulty. So that's a really good one. So it's quite useful maybe to notice, how that was for you today, to just check in with your body. We didn't really apply a particular method. What did you notice today in your body? You can share in 1 or 2 words in the chat. Was it stabilizing? Was it a bit activating? What did you notice as you checked in with yourself today? You're activating, better flow, stabilizing, calm, restful. I often notice a big difference between morning and evening. In the morning, I'm often more activated, and if I have something I'm a little bit nervous about that day, then I'll obviously feel that, and I sometimes find it harder to sit still. And sometimes in those situations, I choose to do some yoga movements or qigong movements because it's kind of more helpful than sitting still. And it's still a mindfulness practice. Hard to be in the moment as well. And who kind of judges themselves or their meditation if there's a lot of thoughts going on and you keep jumping into the future or the past? Who's like, oh, this was a bit shit today, or I'm no good at this. I still do it sometimes. Sometimes it's really subtle. Sometimes it's just a tiny voice that says these things, and it's hard to hear, but it's there in the background, kind of judging my meditation. So it's really good to notice that and kind of go, no, actually, this is fine because I was being aware. So other ways in which you can make your practice a bit more about choice is, I've already said, take a break, move, feel your body, feel the ground. If you feel a bit dissociated, maybe rub your thighs, put some pressure on your thighs, feel the solidity of your body, touch your upper arms, that kind of thing. Imagine someone that would be a resource for you, a kind person here in this call, feeling always a little bit nervous for these things. It's always really nice to see people I know. I've met you on Zoom or in a call. Virginia's face is always resourcing, the cat on her lap, Ange is asking how to tell when dissociated. Yeah, it can be quite subtle. Often it's just I have that slightly spaced out feeling, and sometimes I don't know until after, because I kind of come round a bit and then I've forgotten to do something, or I just feel a bit out of place, or like I haven't necessarily blacked out or anything, but it's, I feel a bit vague, and often it's with hindsight that I might recognize I went into a slightly weird state. Libby's put open-ended choice is very scary. Yeah, so basically Mark mentioned this as well. It can feel really safe to be firmly guided, to be given something to do, a particular method. And then, afterwards you can notice, oh, did that work for me? Make a note. That one didn't. Maybe try it again, as long as it's kind enough. And if it's really leading you to overwhelm, stop. Just stop completely. Go and have a cup of tea. Because you're right, sometimes, as I'm a bit like that as a facilitator, sometimes give too much choice and then people get a bit lost, because I want, I'm caretaking a bit too much. So that's a really good point. Try something, stick with it, as long as it's not totally unkind. Do that practice at least a few times, make notes, then move on to a different one, rather than, the meditation can be all or anything. So if you're doing breath awareness, stay with it, as long as, you're not going into panic. Try again a few times and then go to a different technique. So lots of choice around that. Also, is it useful to sit with others in this kind of way, maybe in the safety of your own home? Is it useful to meet up with friends, or is it more scary? Like if you want to move, or you want to be able to yawn or do a shorter practice than anybody else, then being in the same space in a Buddhist center or something like that might be more triggering, because you kind of feel a bit obliged to sit still and not move. You might feel a little bit trapped or something like that. So that's another one. Is that useful or not? Sitting outside, postures I've mentioned. Really figuring out what's kind for you and meditating for short periods if that's better for you as well. So if you want to know more details on any of those things, obviously you can do our meditation course, you can buy our book. There's a whole chapter in there. David Treleaven already mentioned, he's got a podcast as well, and a talk on our conference, which the library of which is available next week from the 10th for a few days. You can check out the trauma channel there. And mainly it's like getting to know yourself, trying different things so you know what works, and don't force anything. Get advice if you're struggling, get therapy alongside, because aspects of mindfulness I think can be really helpful for most people, but sitting meditation may not be. So that's it. There have been a few questions already. And just put, meditation can induce dissociation. What advice for people with PTSD, complex PTSD, dissociative identity disorder? I think really basically only practicing it if you are getting advice from a therapist or from a specialist in those areas, a meditation teacher specializing in that, like David Treleaven. So you're not going to make yourself worse, because as I say, I think it can be helpful, but it might mean for you that you only practice mindfulness whilst walking in nature. So some of that is covered in our course, but we're not therapists. So, if we're only going to give you the basic things, which might include, as a meditation teacher, you refer people that are really struggling with a complex PTSD. So trauma sensitive is also about recognizing, I'm out of my limit, I'm out of my limits here. I can teach meditation to people that are on the road to recovery. I can give them some recommendations, but if someone is still having massive flashbacks as soon as they're sitting down to meditate, then I would be referring to a trauma therapist. I'm not a trauma therapist, psychiatrist waiting list and NHS can be years long. What to do? Find a way to to pay for your own care. I don't know, it's pretty bad, the long waiting lists. That's what I would do if I could, but I know that's not an option for everybody. So I think, again, you can try things out, you can look up all the resources that are freely available, but at the end of the day you may need some more help from medical professionals and trauma therapists. And different countries have different things. Like in my town where I live, Canterbury in the UK, there's a really good community therapy service. They too have a waiting list, which has got longer during COVID, but it used to be a few months. And they also prioritize. So I know someone with complex PTSD who was seen a lot quicker by them, because he was in a really bad way and really didn't have any money, couldn't work. So yeah, I think it's pretty tricky for people that have severe PTSD. So the risk of re-traumatization is that's what happens often when people are told, you know, meditation's going to help, you must do this, you must do this method. There can be a sort of evangelical conviction amongst some schools of meditation and maybe also in other therapies and healing modalities, that this is the way because it worked for the teacher or it worked for some of their students. And David Treleaven described some case studies like that, where students were shy to say, oh, actually, I'm feeling a lot worse, and they thought it was their own fault. So I think a lot of kind of dialogue with your students, especially when you're working on those kinds of things, so that, you know, they're not sort of sitting there in silence, struggling, afraid to say, you know, they're feeling worse. Yeah, just looking if there was any more questions. Did I miss any? Virginia, did you see any that I missed?
No.
Cool. Excellent. Does anybody else have any questions or anything about the trainings? So our trainings, they're starting at the end of January. The first 3 months is personal practice, and then anybody that would like to use it professionally might want to do the next 3 months, the second half, where you basically, you know, learn some of the stuff I've just been talking about, as well as, you know, good ways to share the practices. Rebecca, when someone isn't used to utilizing their agency to make choice, is there anything we can do to nurture agency? Suggestions. So when I usually work with my students, where first, like, I really support them in doing a practice for a while and talking in maybe peer groups as well as one-to-one with me about any, you know, anything they're experiencing in the practice. So they're learning how to almost guide themselves. They're learning how different practices affect them, and then really encouraging them to kind of go, okay, so when I'm in this type of situation, this type of practice really works for me. So they develop their own range of choices, informed choices that they can tap into So I think a lot of it is dialogue, reinforcing the idea that you are your own best teacher. You know what's going on in your body, and you now have all these tools to hand, these, whatever 3 or 4 core techniques that seem to work really well for you, and a list of tips or favorite go-to guided practices that you can choose from. And that seems to work quite well. And more experienced people tend to get more confident as well. And having a community of practice and support that can really help. Do you have any advice for what to do if someone is triggered when you're teaching meditation in a general class? Yeah, I usually have in meditation, certainly in workshops and retreats with bigger groups, I usually have a helper. I have an assistant who can go and check on someone if anyone runs out of the room, or if they're kind of getting upset in the room, I can say, do you need some support? So and so can go with you. Do you want to go and have a cup of tea? Especially if someone runs out of the room. If I'm teaching by myself in small groups, it's not so bad. I can sort of say, okay, I'm just going to check on that person. And having assistants that are trained, some basic calming down techniques, and recognizing, those signs of someone's. It can be hard to tell sometimes, but recognizing the signs and knowing what to do when that happens. So the David Treleaven stuff is really good, and we'll go into that in our course to a sort of general extent as well, not sort of therapizing people, but knowing how to stabilize them in the short term and make sure they get home okay and all of that, and they've got some ideas of where to find further help. So I also always have name and number of a trauma therapist I can recommend, and that I've checked out, or that I know is a good one to recommend because a respected colleague has experienced them. And that's a lot easier now because a lot more people work online. So that used to be harder if you live in a small town. I'm just reading another comment. Yeah, definitely helping people to recognize their habits and windows of tolerance, and what sort of mental habits that tend to increase the suffering. That's a big part of how we might also empower ourselves. Like, I know sometimes if I'm stressed out, if I stay in bed too long in the morning, I kind of go into a downward spiral of catastrophizing and worrying, and all I need to do is get out of bed and move and stop thinking about it. Sometimes that's hard to do, but as soon as I have got out of bed, I've interrupted that thing. So choosing a different habit, a different thing, can be really helpful. Small steps, Coach Dr. Wu says, definitely small steps. 1 minute meditation is better than every day, or 1 minute a few times a day is better than 1 whole hour once a week and struggling and not enjoying it. A few breaths where you can maybe do a little movement, stretch, remind yourself to notice what's feeling okay in your body, in your environment, is better than trying to have some massive self-improvement project where you're going to go on a 10-day retreat and sort yourself out once and for all. You know, small steps, much better, much more manageable. And then you can also have this sense of, oh, I did something and I achieved it, rather than, you know, kind of almost setting ourselves up to fail sometimes. Because, you know, we're trying to do too much too soon. Great, so we're all almost at our time, 45 minutes. I'm very happy to answer a few more questions if anybody has any. I'll also be online again tomorrow, 1 p.m. UK time, for more of a practice session. So some of you have been attending those 3 times a week sessions where do a very short intro and then a 20 to 25 minute practice and a short Q&A. So 3 of those coming up. And Virginia is doing the Thursday one, and next week is covered by Daniela, the practice sessions, because I'll be in my new house unpacking, and then we have a break because it's Christmas time, so they're still open. You can still register for those. And yeah, as we said as well, 10th to the 15th, the Embodiment Conference Library open to all for free, with some new talks as well, with Gabor Mate and Stephen Porges. Some cool new extra bits that they've agreed to do. Free for 5 days. So yeah.
And Leslie Kaminoff, I believe it was, Karin.
Sorry?
And the new interview, I think, was it Leslie Kaminoff?
Oh yes, I think it was as well. Yeah, a yoga teacher I really like. So that should be fun. And yeah, remember not to traumatize yourself by binging on the trauma channel. That's the thing. So yeah, be kind. Always be kind to yourself, which might be part of the process to learn. Certainly one that I've had to do. Great, so I think there we are. Yeah, choice, bottom line. Yeah, take care of yourself. So thank you, everybody, and maybe see you later this week for some more trauma-sensitive practice.